Well, hello and welcome to Wellness by Design today. I'm your host, Jane Hogan, the Wellness Engineer, and I'm really excited to have Scott Rewick here today. We are pain buddies. Not everyone can say they got a pain buddy, but we are pain buddies. We both have a story of being in chronic pain and just ordinary people living ordinary lives and wanting to figure it out. So, Scott, tell us about your story, how you went from being in chronic pain and what you tried to do about it and where you are now.
Well, I'd like to think that my story is not so atypical from a lot of people's story, which is, I was fairly active growing up. I was stretching all the time and moving my body. And so I was doing kind of like I think what a lot of people normally do. And to kind of layer on top of that, I also did competitive jujitsu. And I wouldn't say super competitive, but I was really a jujitsu practitioner for over 20 years. And so while I love that sport a lot, I mean, it just did so much for me. I really enjoyed it. It left me with a lot of pain because jujitsu is a lot of grabbing and pushing and pulling and submissions and locks and all types of things. And so kind of growing up in that world, I just learned to rely heavily on pain medication, to be honest. I mean, pain medication from Advil to Tylenol just became kind of a normal thing because of the stuff I was doing. That kind of then led to surgeries and then multiple surgeries. So, that was my journey relative to kind of like being active in something. And then I think a couple other interesting things happened. Like, I'm getting older, right? So I kind of like naturally assume that when you get older, stuff just starts to hurt all the time, right? When you turn 50 and things aren't working as well as they did. And that the third kind of overlay on that, I think, was COVID. Like COVID just made me move a whole lot less and was isolated. So it was like I wasn't moving, I wasn't eating great. I had a lot of chronic pain from past injuries. And then finally, the idea of just of not really moving a whole lot and getting older, right? And so all of that culminated into just pain became just a natural thing for me. I'd wake up in pain. I would go to sleep in pain. I just kind of got used to it. I mean, I don't know if we ever really fully get used to it, but pain was just something that I just was normalized. My shoulders just throbbed and my arms and my knees and my back. So it really became a dominant feature of my life over the last few years.
And a lot of us are told, I was told this, oh, you'll learn to live with it.
Right.
Like, how fun is that? It's not fun at all. Um,
Yeah.
so you had all this chronic pain, and so you have been living like that for a lot of years.
Yep.
What flipped the switch for you that made you say, well, I want to do something about this?
You know, one of the I don't know, parables or sentences that resonates with me in my life is you'll oftentimes do more for other people than you'll ever do for yourself. And so I got used to it just as a function of this is just what it's going to be. Then entered, an 8-year-old boy. I have an 8-year-old boy. I'm an older dad, so I'm 55, but I have an 8-year-old son. And I remember him, kind of coming downstairs and always wanting to play soccer. He just loved soccer from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. He just wanted to play soccer all day long. And, I would just kind of hobble out of bed. I'd be in a ton of pain. I'd either say, buddy, I can't play with you today, or it would take me a lot to get going with him. And I realized that this little guy deserves an active father, someone who's going to be there and able to kind of be in his world. He's a real physical kind of guy. And so for me, I just said there has to be a different way. I mean, pain medications weren't working. You might kind of mask it with a drink or two at night or, gosh, God forbid, surgery. But I finally came to the realization that the kind of dad that I wanted to become just wasn't going to be possible if I was always sidelined in excruciating pain. So it kind of led me on this journey of like trying to figure out a different way of doing it.
That's so interesting because uh, my own process that I use, the first step is desire. And
Mhm.
like we really have, some people are fine. They're okay with taking the medications and or whatever, that's them. But if you've got a desire like you have, like I want to be a better dad,
Totally.
be there for my son. For me, it was like, I want to have freedom in my freedom years. And, you know, when you've got a desire as strong as that, then it makes you want to find solutions. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you were seeking solutions. So where did you go from there?
Prior to kind of making the decision to kind of like, let's seriously take a look at this, like nothing had really been working. Prior to that moment, right? I, like so many other people, relied on pills and, topical creams and surgeries. And that was kind of a solution. I wouldn't say it was the solution, but it was one of the solutions. So I got really lucky because several years ago, I hooked up with a couple of filmmakers, and it was just kind of fortuitous. Like I didn't know that they had an interest in making a docuseries at all. And they certainly didn't know my pain story. So it was just this weird, maybe like, when you decide something, it's almost like the universe just like, the clouds open and it just gives you the solution and you don't know how or why it happened. But here I was talking to these two filmmakers about chronic pain. It's obviously, as you kind of well know, a giant problem in this country. And we started talking about it from just like different perspectives. Like there's a lot of different ways of looking at pain. And so I just got real lucky. They had a desire to make a film around alternate pain kind of modalities. I was like raising my hand saying, hey, I'm in pain. I would love selfishly to be able to interview all these people and learn about different ways of doing it. So it was just really, I don't know if it was just the universe telling me that the time was now, or hooking me up with these filmmakers, but it really helped me set off on a journey of discovery, in terms of like being able to interview and talk to all these amazing people and super intelligent people that have different ways of dealing with different parts of chronic pain. So I really I'm very lucky that I had that opportunity to kind of hook up with these guys, because that was the impetus behind making what I did.
Mm. So good. And you mentioned chronic pain is a big problem in the US, but worldwide,
Mm.
20% of the adult population worldwide is in chronic pain. It's a number one reason that people see their doctors, the number one cause of disability worldwide. And here's another stat that always sticks in my head. 65% of people over the age of 65 suffer with chronic pain. Like it's just it's everywhere, and
Crazy.
it's needless. Well, not needless. There are solutions beyond what we've been told.
Right, right, right.
So
And I think it's hard because the average person that looks at this just, quite frankly, isn't exposed to all these different ways of doing it. I mean, we are just taught from the moment we're born to whatever. It's a guy in a white lab coat or a woman in a white lab coat, and they're going to kind of tell you what it is. And again, it's not to disparage their world, because there's so many well-intentioned kind of like Western based doctors that are trying to do the right thing. But
absolutely.
for me, it was like being introduced to a different language, almost this kind of like the subculture of highly intelligent doctors, scientists, practitioners that were having real success doing things quite a bit differently. So a lot of people, part of the reason for the film is just to expose different ways of doing it.
Hmm. I feel like you were going on the journey of, my path as well. The second step is explore. It's kind of what you were doing, right? Exploring all these different solutions. So yeah, I think, Western doctors, they don't have a lot of tools in their toolkit. I think
right.
awareness is changing now, but we've got like a whole lifetime of shifting our way of thinking about how to deal with, well, chronic pain, but health in general, chronic pain specifically.
Yeah.
So you worked with these filmmakers and you were interviewing different people. So let's hear a little bit about what you learned on
Uh,
during this process.
well, I mean, I can kind of like encapsulate or summarize, all 65 people into kind of these four major areas that I kind of boil it down to that seem like all the roads they were going down seem to kind of end up in one of these four buckets. But, I was just so lucky to kind of, we took a look at all different types of different healing modalities from, hyperbaric chambers to cryo to acupuncture to, I had extensive blood work done, from looking at all kinds of these different scientific markers. So from red light therapy to blue light therapy to, kind of supplements and probiotics. So I really got a very broad brush stroke of so many different types of modalities. But again, most of all of that boiled into these four buckets that I think was really helpful for me because, the challenge I had in talking to a lot of these doctors is, and I don't know if you've had the same, experience, is they're so overly developed in their field that they'll oftentimes talk in like six-syllable words and say things like the ATP cycle, the Krebs cycle, mitochondrial, and I'm like, whoa, hold on. It's like,
Yeah.
just give it simple to me. Like, meet me where I'm at. I don't know. Talk to me in single syllables and exactly tell me what this means. So I feel like I was kind of a translator for trying to listen to what they were working on and translate that into simple things that people can apply in their life that would make the most difference. So yeah, the range of topics was just really amazing. I mean, incredible.
So what were the four buckets?
Okay, so this is me trying to kind of like
Simplify.
summarize. Yeah. So I would say the one, and you kind of hit upon it, is your why or the head part of it, right? And that was really counterintuitive to me because I thought we'd be talking about, I don't know, other things like diet, and I'll get to that later, but it's really like developing the why, like the mindset, right? Like,
Yeah.
why do diets fail so much? Because people just can't change their belief structure around food. Or we talked about having a bigger reason than yourself. Like, so my 8-year-old boy needs a soccer buddy and it's got to be me. So part of it was just like the things you tell yourself, right? About who you are, what you believe is true, what you believe is not true, what's possible. So much of that soup mix is so important because once you can nail that piece of it, then I think the rest of it comes kind of lock, stock, and barrel. So
I
then the
agree.
other bucket would be food, right? What are you putting in your body? And that's, I wouldn't say it's an obvious one, right? But most of the country is obese and has eating problems and stuck on the standard American diet. So the other one is centered around food and what you put in your body. Okay. The third had to do with movement, right? Are you moving your body? Are you going for a walk? Are you regularly exercising? And so a lot of the practitioners got back to movement-based solutions. So whether it's yoga or, simply taking a walk or whatever, are you moving your body? And then the fourth one was more kind of like external toxins. Like, are you exposed to things like pesticides or black mold, or are you breathing in unclean air, that kind of thing? So that was kind of like environmental toxins. So it was like what you believe, what you're putting in your body, are you using your body, are you moving it? And then obviously like trying to avoid things like pesticides and neurotoxins that would make it really hard for you to heal if your body's always fighting off these types of external things. So I would say that, like, most of them fell into those four buckets, which made it easier for me to kind of like get my head around it.
Yeah. It sounds really similar to the five lifestyle
Mm.
factors of functional medicine. The only one you didn't mention, and maybe it's because it falls in one of the other categories, was sleep. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Oh,
so yeah, it's very similar. So stress, sleep, movement, nutrition, and relationships is another one as well. But that, I can see how some of them can all go in the stress factor.
yeah, I was going to mention sleep. Sleep is like obviously a huge one. I feel like sleep is one of those things that's so easy to dismiss because we all do it and we don't get good sleep. But you're right. I mean, more and more just being able to sleep is such a key component. And, it's funny because I realized that, in my own chronic pain journey, my sleep was so horrible. I was like, waking up multiple times in the night. When I did wake up, I would grab my phone and look on Facebook or, I had the worst sleep ever. And it just left me drained and feeling like horrible. So if there would be a fifth, that sleep would definitely be it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's tough. That's a tough one when you're in chronic pain because often the pain wakes you up, and then that's
Oh,
start worrying. When is this going to be? Like it's just a really
totally,
vicious cycle. So,
totally.
um, how much of what you learned from talking to these 65 people?
Yeah, yeah.
How much of it is like lifestyle habits, and then how much of it is sort of beyond, like how much is within someone's control? I guess that's what I'm getting at.
I think the good news is that like most of it is, right? Like it's the idea of like, I think that with Western-based medicine, again, not to knock it at all, but you abdicate control, you give control, you're there to take direction. So take two pills, then do this, then do this, then do this, and come back and see me in 6 weeks and we'll figure out if it got better. If it didn't get better, we'll double the dosage or we'll put you on something stronger or whatever. So I feel like, I think this is why so many people just get exasperated because it feels so out of your control, right? Like if it does not pills, I had multiple, shoulder surgeries on my shoulder to fix, I had a bicep reattached, all kinds of crazy things to deal with these issues. So I think that the good news, at least as I understood it, is that most of what people are talking about is very much in your control. I mean, what you choose to put in your body, kind of 100% in your control. Whether you go for a walk, everyone can do it for the most part. Are you doing it? What are you telling yourself? I'm a loser, I'm fat, or whatever, or, gosh, just trying to eat organic food, like staying away from pesticide laden stuff. So I think the good news in all of this is that by and large, a lot of it is in your control. It's kind of comes down to, do you have the big enough why to do it, right? Which is like going back to the first, what you said earlier, which is like developing that first piece of it. So, and that being said, I mean, I think also it's fair to point out that some of the stuff that I did was very expensive,
Yes.
and not everyone has the money to run, $3,000 worth of blood tests, right? Which I got done, or, go to cryotherapy, which might be $30 a time. So there are some things that are expensive, but I tried to focus on, meeting people where they're at. If they're in a budget, what can you do within your budget? So the good news, I think, is a lot of it is really both easy to do. Nothing's really easy, but it's not expensive and it's within your control.
Yeah, that's exactly the philosophy that I have. I love showing people that it's just simple things. Like, I mean, you talk about cryotherapy. I live across from a river, and I live in Newfoundland, Canada. It's cold. I do
Oh,
go
you have
down.
your own, right? Yeah,
I go down and dip in the river, right, to get that cold therapy. Anyone can turn their shower to cold, right?
totally.
So there's
Totally.
lots of things that you can do. So what did you dive into things like trauma, subconscious programming, things like that in your docuseries?
Yeah, one of the women that well, you mean like physical trauma or mental trauma?
Either. I mean, we've all had
Either.
trauma, right?
Yeah, I mean, there were a number of professionals, primarily like chiropractors and medical doctors that dealt with physical trauma, kind of like that, something happened in your body where it's physical, right? But for the most part, they were dealing with the chronic stuff. There was a woman, Laura Taylor, who ran Vulnerable Living, which spoke more about the mental stuff, the stuff that we carry kind of intergenerationally between generations, so that that passed down trauma, or even the passed down belief structures. I mean, I would sit, like I'm sure so many of us did, at a dinner table as a young boy, and my mother said, make sure you eat everything off your plate because there's people starving in China, right? So like all of this belief structures about food, or your relationship with food, or you know, intergenerational trauma, she did talk quite a bit about, in terms of like how that affects the way you view the world and what you choose to put in your body, and even maybe how your body processes something. I don't know, like your thoughts can mess up your digestive tract. I don't know. So
Mm,
yeah, it was kind of a good mix of people that spoke about the head piece of it, but also, you know, there was just endless amounts of MDs and doctors and chiropractors that understood the physical part of that trauma as well.
mhm, mhm. Just from my own personal experience, I knew that my pain was directly related to stress, and
Mhm.
then as I was started peeling back the layers, it went back further, you know, childhood beliefs and things like that that I could see. And actually, I find it so fascinating. So I've done a lot of research into you know, personality traits, which are really behavioral adaptations to beliefs, you know,
Yeah,
got subconsciously, and how they relate to chronic pain and also pain in different parts of the body. It's very, very fascinating how we hold
totally.
in our physical body. And, you know, it's just eventually the body it ends up speaking, right? The
Yep.
body speaks through
Yep.
pain. Um,
Yep.
so did that come up very much in your conversations?
Yeah, I mean, all of that came up, you know, in various different levels. I mean, you know, a lot of these people, again, were so subject matter expert driven personalities that I had to kind of drag it out of them in a way that allowed people to kind of relate to it. So there were people that, you know, focused on rheumatoid arthritis. There was people that spoke about energy levels, like, you know, the amount of your mitochondrial functions. There were people that addressed, you know, more of the physical stuff, like, hey, what you know, what chiropractic actually does, or with the needles and stuff, or the, you know, cryotherapy. And you know, my father was a scientist at Stanford, and so, you know, what got passed on to me is, I think, two things. Like, one is, I think, a healthy amount of skepticism on a lot of this stuff. I really, I'll say it, and it may not be popular, but I'm not a big kind of like woo woo fan. And that's just my own narrative. Like, I want to really understand the science behind why something works and why it doesn't work. So, you know, if someone was speaking about something that I was like, I've never heard of that before, I really try to dive into the science behind it, because that's how my brain processes. It's not for everyone, but that's how I did it. And so I was just, by and large, really pleasantly surprised that, you know, as this field of functional medicine evolves and it's tackling these chronic problems, there's just more and more of really good body of research, right? That is supporting all these studies that support, you know, peer reviewed studies that support the science of what they're saying. So I really appreciated that part of it, because I wanted to kind of like try to separate the, again, the woo woo, like, you know, stuff that I just couldn't get my head around, to like what was scientific based stuff that I could really dig into. So that part was really cool to me, because I had, you know, I have some degree of skepticism on some of this stuff. Like, okay, I've tried everything. Sure. I'm going to put red light on my arm and it's going to heal, right? Like, show me that, right? Show me the science on that. And I was really, by and large, pleasantly surprised with the amount of research that's done in these topics.
Mm. You know, I so appreciate that you say that, because I think there is obviously we're kind of shifting out of when we're talking about shifting out of like take a pill or have surgery, then people are going to be skeptical about
Right.
anything new. And we're also in a paradigm where we want to see things proven by science. And so
Totally.
that helps people address that skepticism that
Yep. Yep. Yep.
science. So you know, it's really important. I don't like apologize for that. I think it's important, and also that that is how we get people to change their beliefs that something else is
Right.
possible them, right?
right. Because the reality is there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there that are just selling complete. I mean, that's the reality of it, is that there's a lot of stuff out there that is based on just nothing. It's just telling a good story, so that's part of it as well, is that I think people have a high degree of skepticism because they've also tried a lot of this stuff that's purported to have all these miracle benefits, and they don't work. You're right. So people are very skeptical. I walked into it, my brother is a banker and he works in the health care space, and he kind of casually said, well, the reason this stuff's called alternative medicine is it doesn't work. It hasn't been proven. So I really tried to approach this from a scientific background to say, what can we reliably rely on in terms of things that have been, no, I wouldn't say nothing's ever proven 100%, but I really leaned into that. So I think for people that are considering alternate ways of dealing with chronic pain, you can sleep well knowing that, a lot of this is being, if that's your mindset, if you want proof or whatever, a lot of this is being proved out over time. And so that was really helpful for me to kind of address that skepticism that I had
Yeah,
about some of the stuff they were doing.
that's so good, so good. And we kind of know, like with the statistics we talked about, the current paradigm isn't working,
Right,
right?
right,
Or the current model isn't working. We still have
right.
20% of the population in chronic pain, despite all the millions, billions of dollars put into, drug therapies and surgeries and all these things. So people are still in chronic pain. So we know it's not
Yep,
working. So that's why people are seeking alternate solutions, like you, like me. I'm an
yep.
engineer. That's my background. I needed the science as well, and I think people do need that. So I so appreciate that in your docuseries you've addressed that and come at it from that lens, right?
Yeah,
I think that helps people. That will help people see that there are some other solutions, and also like give them hope. That's really what we want to do.
totally. That's right. Yeah. And I think I was very lucky because I'm naturally a very curious person. I like a lot of really interesting things. And so I really tried to put myself in the shoes of the person suffering from pain and I try to ask the questions that they would ask. So I really approached it like, look, I don't know anything. I'm a consumer. I'm in pain. What do I do? And I was constantly steering people out of, kind of the 5-syllable words they were using into like, that's all great, but I have no idea what you're talking about. So let's get back to like what it is and how it actually works. And so I really tried to ask questions that could bring that out in the doctor or healthcare professional. And by and large, people were amazing at it. They really were able to kind of like cut through the scientific jargon and get to like the real basic part of how it works. Because I think if people realize that it's pretty basic, the adoption rate goes up considerably. If you think like, I can do this today, and I understand what they're talking about, rather than just, the scientific mumbo jumbo.
I don't think we've said the name of your docuseries yet.
Yeah, so it's strangepain.com.
Strangepain.com. And it's going to be available. We'll have a link there for people to watch it for free. So that's exciting. Hopefully, like we piqued your curiosity during this conversation, and I've actually watched it already, and it's fabulous. So
Oh, good.
I can tell people that it is really good. So um, I always ask my guests one last question, and that is, because this is called Wellness by Design, is about intentional living and about being intentional about reversing chronic pain or whatever's going on. So, and I love the baby steps, because when steps are small, people will take them. So, what is your recommendation for the baby steps someone could take today that's going to begin to initiate healing in their body based on all these interviews?
Yeah, no, I mean, so let's go back to the 4 buckets plus the fifth, which is sleep. So, the first bucket is this thing up here, right? And it could be as easy as getting a meditation app, or getting a simple breath work app that just allows you to kind of calm your nervous system and meditate. Meditation, something I'm learning about, but or there's just endless number of books out there that talk about, kind of like the way you speak to yourself. So I think that's an easy thing to do is just download a meditation app and just for 10 minutes a day, learn to meditate or do something that relates to what's in here. The next thing is just like, what you put in your mouth. Like just be slightly more thoughtful, right? Like, is it process? Is it this, is it the standard American diet stuff? And is there one small change that you can add to your diet that might make a world of difference? It might be just adding a salad once a week or something similar that allows you to kind of like start to take inventory what you put inside of your machine, your body, right? The third would be just like go for a walk. Like you can start with a 10-minute walk. It doesn't have to be like you go to a gym and you sign a contract and you're working out 7 days a week. It could be as simple as just trying to incorporate one walk per day into your life. And that will do so much for you just to move, right? And it's not that hard. We all can do it. We all can throw on some running shoes and go walk for 10 minutes. Try that. The fourth thing would be like just generally be aware of like, are there external toxins that you can deal with? Are you looking at like, there are pesticides on your food or look around your house? Is there black mold? So kind of like study your surroundings a little bit and see if there's something that might be causing you to get inflamed externally. And then of course, the fifth one is just sleep, right? And I have a whole protocol that I use around my sleep to kind of like make it better and work on it. But just focus on your sleep. And it's the simple stuff, right? Put your phone down, make it super dark, make it super cold, that kind of stuff that we all do. So, do you have to do all five? You don't, but you could just do one, and then one builds to two, and two builds to five. And then you really begin that upward momentum of like trying to shift things. So yeah, I say really keep it simple, but there's definitely things we all can do pretty easily.
Yeah. Oh, so good. And, whoever's listening to this or watching this, like something stood out in what Scott just said. And maybe that you were thinking, I could do that. So that is your thing. And maybe it's something, it could be something different for different people, or maybe it's made you think, you know what, I could do this. So whatever it is, make a commitment to yourself that you're going to do it. Just like start a new habit and do
Yep.
it every day. And I learned somewhere, I don't know who said this, what you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while.
Oh my gosh, so true. So
It's
true.
true on like, the good things and the bad things, right? So
Totally.
just add one more little thing into your day that you do every single day. Scott Rewick, this has been fabulous. So we know where people can find out about the docuseries. I appreciate you so much for the work that you did,
Thank
for
you.
subjecting yourself to all these different modalities,
Thank
and
you.
for like distilling it down, like getting the experts to come down, explain it in simple terms, and have the science to back it up as well. So thanks
Yeah.
so much for that great work you've done in the world. I so appreciate that, and I appreciate you being a guest here today.
Yeah, Jane, thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
And to the people watching and listening, take something from this today, do something a little bit different to begin to initiate healing in your body. And if you know someone else who's got chronic pain, please tell them about this show, tell them about the docu-series. They are going to change their lives because of this. If they'll get motivated, they'll learn about some new modalities, and you'll give them hope, and you could be the catalyst that's freeing them from pain. So thanks very much everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.